Good evening. Welcome to our annual meeting. I'm very sorry that I'm not with you in person this evening. Almost a year ago, I committed to doing a presentation at an international aerospace conference in Vienna, making sure the date didn't coincide with the high holidays, and not yet knowing when our AGM would be. Several months later, however, the date was set for the Jewish Family and Child annual meeting, not to coincide with Brian's upcoming hip surgery. Unfortunately, there was a very small window that was open for the AGM, and I was already committed. I'm especially sorry not to be there tonight to hear Max Eisen's presentation. I've known Max over the years as Larry's father, and I used to see him up at the cottage, but I haven't had the opportunity to hear his very impactful story. I hope to catch up with you, Max, after I return. This has been a very special year for Jewish Family and Child. As you know, it's been our 150th anniversary. We had a great gala in celebration of the 150th. Jewish Family and Child has always been at the cutting edge of social services. From the Hebrew Ladies Maternity Aid and Child Welfare Society in 1908, bringing Jewish orphans to Canada after the Holocaust, launching a play therapy program in 1947, coordinating a community forum on domestic violence in the Jewish community in 1987, and sending our youth in care and former youth in care on a transformational journey to Israel in 2016. We've had some significant events at Jewish Family and Child over the past year. The biggest, of course, has been the 150-year gala. In addition, we had Dining at the Diamond at the Jerome D. Diamond Adolescent Center, and Cringeworthy for and by our Young Professionals group. And we have the upcoming Unsung Heroes event in October. Who knew? A musical review of the influence of Jewish artists on Broadway and music. As well, there'll be a third-party event in November to help raise money for Holocaust survivors. We hope that you'll attend one or both of these events. Over 150 years, our agency has managed to expand and transition with the times. Just think of all the disruption we've seen in the business world over the last number of years. From Amazon.com dominating online shopping, Uber disrupting the taxi business, Airbnb taking a slice out of the hotel business, and the music industry going from records to tapes to discs, and now online streaming. We also see artificial intelligence moving at a very fast pace. For example, your GPS tells you how to get someplace before you even realize that you're going there. And your car will soon take you there without anyone driving it. Your fridge will tell you what's the status of the food that it's cooling, as well as how much milk and bread you're going to need for the next week. Unless, of course, you're gluten-free. What does all this mean for us? How will this impact the social services? Well, nobody knows for sure. But the one thing we can be sure of is that change will happen. We will be affected by change at many different levels. For one, our funding mechanisms will change. Well, we are grateful to the UJA Federation of Greater Toronto, the Ontario government, United Ways of Greater Toronto and York, the Regional Municipality of York, the Claims Conference, and the Azrieli Foundation, and all of our generous donors. We still have to develop new and additional methods and sources of funding, not just to remain sustainable, but to grow our services and provide even more of what's needed in our communities. As the world changes around us through technology, our human needs will only increase. Many of us are old enough to remember the days when personal computers first came on the scene. We were promised that they would save us so much time we could start planning extended vacations and sabbaticals. With the introduction of the BlackBerry, remember that, and the iPhone, the workday suddenly increased into evenings, nights, weekends, and vacations time. We know that technological innovations don't always work out quite the way that their creators thought that they would. Not only are we living in a technological revolution, we live in a new age of information. We probably know more about mental health and poverty now than we've ever known in our history. The number of scientific papers being published in mental health alone is staggering. There are currently 525 scientific journals publishing thousands of articles just on this topic. In a search on Amazon.com, I came across 60,000 books related to mental health. Yet, with this explosion of knowledge about mental health and the increased availability of technology, we still haven't been able to take control of these problems. In fact, in many ways, things have actually gotten worse. We've seen increases in the need for our services. It's hard to explain why mental health care visits in Ontario rose 25% for children and youth between 2006 and 2014. This has been the continuation of a trend we've seen over decades. Children and youth made 1.35 million visits to physicians for mental health and addictions-related care in 2014, an increase of 25% since 2006, according to a report published by the Institute for Clinical Evaluative Sciences. In the same year, children and youth made more than 70,000 emergency department visits for mental health and addictions-related care, an increase of 53% from 2006. In our own services at Jewish Family and Child, we've seen a 59% increase since 2015 in the number of families receiving child welfare services in addition to counseling through our Women's Abuse program. On the other hand, and there is some good news, over the last 5 years, there has been a 60% decrease in the number of children in care of Jewish Family and Child. And last year, over 99% of the children we serviced in child protection remained with their own families and communities and did not come into the care of the agency. This is a better solution for children and families, as well as being a more cost-effective solution. Amazingly, our agency has also seen an increased need in funding for services to Holocaust survivors. It's hard to believe that both our numbers and the needs have increased so many years after the Holocaust. Survivors who have gotten by with little or no assistance for so long have reached a point where, as they have aged, their need for support has become more critical. At one point this year, we had a waiting list of 251 of these clients. We continue to actively raise funds for this need. In our annual report, you can read about many of the other areas in which we serve the community. It's always been a challenge to juggle our resources with the existing needs. I'm sure we'll see technology play an increasingly important role in our ability to provide services to families and children. In the past year, we've put a great deal of time, effort, and money in transitioning our intake, tracking, and reporting system to CPIN, the ministry's computerized information system. This should enable us and the ministry to be more up-to-date in our provision of services and needed documentation. Artificial intelligence will likely play a greater role in the delivery of social services in the near future. The ability to help evaluate families at intake and triage their care is one way. There will be an increase in our ability to monitor progress in children and families remotely. The provision of some services through telecommunication technologies becomes more and more realistic as more clients can access smartphones. However, technology will not replace the human element in the work that we do. As much as we automate, increase our artificial intelligence, and join the Internet of Things, we will never replace human caring and compassion. It's the direct, one-to-one experience of human emotions that sets us apart. We can always look for efficiencies in our ways of providing services, but you can be assured that the service providers in this industry, the people who work with children and families, will continue to be needed in the near and distant future. I want to thank all the people that have contributed to making Jewish Family and Child the great agency that it is. This includes the agency's staff, funders, partners, volunteers, and other stakeholders in supporting the mission of Jewish Family and Child. I thank our board of directors for their support and involvement and look forward to another year of their engagement as we progress in our work. I especially want to thank our senior team, Brian, Talia, Zaki, Nikki, Hannah, and Monica. And of course, thank you, Eileen, for all that you do, as well as keeping me on top of things. Thank you, Sharon List, for chairing this evening for me. And of course, I want to thank my wife, Rodine, for her support in letting me take part in all these endeavors. Finally, I want to wish you all a very happy and healthy New Year. Good night.